What if a dollar had no dollar behind it? Before you answer, check your own. The dollar in your pocket has no vault behind it either, not since 1971. Something else holds it up. And this is what happens when you build a dollar without it. They called it TerraUSD. No cash, no treasury bill, just a second coin, a computer rule, and the belief that somebody would always take the other side. One coin with one job. Stay worth $1 every day. If TerraUSD fell, the system created more LUNA to pull it back. But the rescue had one condition no algorithm could enforce. Somebody still had to want the LUNA. In May 2022, people stopped wanting it. The machine printed 6.5 trillion LUNA. A Bitcoin reserve worth about $2.5 billion was almost completely spent. The dollar still broke. The Justice Department describes more than $40 billion in investor losses. But the crime began with an earlier failure. In 2021, TerraUSD fell and appeared to recover. The public was told the machine had saved itself. The Justice Department's account is 4 words. That was a lie. Start with the dollar you already trust. Since 1971, it has not been a claim on gold or on anything sitting in a vault. It is somebody's IOU. What makes it good is not an asset. It is an obligation. A government that takes only its own currency for taxes. Courts that enforce debts in it. And behind the bank holding yours, a central bank that can create it without limit. Nobody has to believe in a dollar. Somebody is obliged to make it good. A stablecoin is a digital token built to track something outside crypto, usually the US dollar. The word stable does not tell you how that stability is produced. One version keeps real dollars or cash-like assets in reserve. If one token is supposed to equal $1, there should be roughly $1 of assets behind it. The important part is not the logo or the code, it is redemption. And redemption is an obligation. Somebody has to be holding the asset, and somebody has to hand it over. TerraUSD made a different promise. It did not offer a dollar from a vault. It offered $1 worth of LUNA, created by the system itself. So there was no counterparty. Nobody was obliged to make it good. The promise was that a market always would. Here was the rule. 1 TerraUSD could always be exchanged inside the protocol for exactly $1 worth of LUNA. And $1 worth of LUNA could always be exchanged for 1 TerraUSD. Suppose TerraUSD traded for 98 cents. A trader could buy one for 98 cents, exchange it through the protocol for $1 of LUNA, and keep the difference. The TerraUSD would be destroyed. Its supply would shrink. Buying pressure should pull its market price back toward $1. Above $1, the trade ran in reverse. The market, chasing small profits, was supposed to defend the peg automatically. It was clever. It was also circular. TerraUSD was stable because it could become LUNA. LUNA was valuable because people believed in the Terra system, including TerraUSD. Strip away the software and you have an institution whose only asset is the stock it prints itself. If confidence left both at once, the machine would not find a floor. It would manufacture the fall. Confidence had help. Terra offered a savings product called Anchor, with a yield of roughly 19.5% a year. At the peak, about 3 of every 4 TerraUSD in existence sat inside it. That yield made the stablecoin useful. It also concentrated the exit. Millions of people did not need to understand mint and burn. They saw something presented as a digital dollar paying nearly 20%. The yield was supported by a reserve, money set aside to pay it, not simply income the system earned. The rate attracted demand. The demand made the ecosystem look strong. And that apparent strength supported the coin paying the rate. Another circle. Then, in May 2021, the promise faced a real test. TerraUSD fell below 92 cents. The protocol did not restore it on its own. According to the Justice Department, Kwon reached an agreement with executives at a high-frequency trading firm. The firm bought large amounts of TerraUSD and pushed the price back to $1 artificially. Kwon later admitted that conduct in his guilty plea. So the peg was restored. Not by the protocol, by somebody with money, under a private agreement, and nobody was told. The public saw a coin fall and recover. Kwon said the protocol had restored the peg. That recovery became proof that the design worked. It had proved the opposite. By May 2022, the TerraUSD market was roughly 9 times larger than it had been during that first failure. People were not only betting on a theory, they were betting on a track record. And the most important event in that track record had been staged. 1 year later, on Saturday the 7th of May, a large amount of TerraUSD was sold. Who sold first and why remains disputed. The important fact is what the sale exposed. A reserve-backed stablecoin can answer panic with redemption. Return the token, receive the asset behind it. TerraUSD could answer only with LUNA, and the market price of LUNA was already falling. This had happened before, outside crypto. In September 2008, a large American money market fund, another private promise of a fixed dollar, fell to 97 cents a share, 3 cents. A run started within a day. Within 3 days, the United States Treasury guaranteed the entire industry, and the run stopped. That is what a lender of last resort is. Somebody with a bottomless balance sheet arrives, and running stops being worth it. In May 2022, nobody arrived. No central bank. No insurer. Nobody obliged to buy at $1 when nobody else would. Then the crowded door opened. Depositors pulled TerraUSD out of anchor and tried to leave. The peg slipped. Every holder now had to decide whether to trust the mechanism or get out before everyone else. Stability had become a race. The protocol did exactly what it was designed to do. Holders exchanged TerraUSD for $1 worth of LUNA. But each LUNA was worth less than the one before it. Paying the next dollar therefore required more coins. More LUNA meant more supply. More supply pushed LUNA's price lower. A lower price meant the next redemption required even more LUNA. 350 million LUNA became 6.5 trillion in 3 days. There was no broken line of code to fix. The stabilizing rule was now creating the asset whose falling value made the next rescue harder. The machine was not malfunctioning. It was consuming itself. Terra did have an emergency fund. The LUNA Foundation Guard had spent months acquiring Bitcoin to defend the peg, more than 80,000 Bitcoin, worth about $2.5 billion when the crisis began. Buying it was the admission. A system that stabilizes itself does not need $2.5 billion of outside money standing by. The foundation sold the Bitcoin and bought TerraUSD. Real outside money was now trying to do what the supposedly self-correcting system could not. It bought time. It did not restore trust. Within roughly a week, the reserve had fallen from 80,394 Bitcoin to about 313. The wallet is public. The before and after balances are still on-chain. This is the difference the whole story turns on. A central bank's reserve cannot run out because it creates the currency. Terra's could. In about a week, it did. By the middle of May, both coins were worth approximately nothing. The Justice Department describes more than $40 billion in investor losses. Wider market impact estimates run higher. No thief's wallet sits at the end of this trail. The value depended on 2 promises: TerraUSD at $1 and continued demand for LUNA. When both promises failed together, the value did not travel somewhere else. It ceased to exist. An unstable design is not automatically a crime. Markets fail, banks run, engineers build systems that break in ways they did not predict. The criminal question is what people were told while their money was entering the system. The hidden 2021 rescue was one part of a wider pattern Kwon admitted in his guilty plea. The Justice Department lists 5 categories of misrepresentation spanning 2018 through 2022, including what the stablecoin could do, what the reserve was, and what Terraform's products were actually doing. But the stablecoin claim is the cleanest way to understand the harm. The protocol failed. Outside money restored the peg. Then, the restoration was presented as evidence that the protocol had succeeded. The failure exposed the weakness. The story told about the failure helped attract the money that made the final collapse so much larger. Accountability came through 2 different courtrooms. In April 2024, a civil jury found Terraform Labs and Kwon liable for fraud. Terraform agreed to a settlement valued at more than $4.5 billion and entered a wind-down process. That was civil liability. It did not produce the prison sentence. After his arrest in Montenegro on a false passport and extradition to New York, Kwon pleaded guilty in August 2025 to a fraud conspiracy and a separate count of wire fraud. Prosecutors asked for 12 years. On December 11th, the judge imposed 15. The people holding TerraUSD were not all traders making an obvious casino bet. In parts of Asia especially, it had been marketed as a sensible place to keep savings. The losses included retirement money, house deposits, and money people had put away because they believed the word stable meant safety. There were reported suicides. No criminal restitution was ordered in the American case. Prosecutors did not seek it, citing the number of victims. Kwon instead agreed to forfeit more than $19 million. Recovery for everyone else runs through Terraform's bankruptcy and its wind-down trust, which received roughly 16,600 crypto loss claims. As of the trust's public report for the quarter ending March 2026, estimated repayments were between $185 and $442 million. The amount distributed was 0. Stable is not a property a company can print onto a coin. It is a claim about what happens when people want their money back. What stands behind it? Who is obliged to make it good? And what happens if everyone asks at once? Terra's answers were LUNA, confidence, a subsidized savings rate, and a Bitcoin fire extinguisher. 4 attempts to build a lender of last resort out of nothing. Every one of them could run out, and did. Only one ever worked. It came from outside in 2021 by private agreement, and it was hidden. They had rebuilt the shape of a bank, deposits, a promised fixed value, a redemption window, and left out every part that exists to stop a bank from failing. Then they were surprised by a run. That does not mean every stablecoin works like TerraUSD. It means the word stable is the beginning of the investigation, not the end of it. So when something calls itself a dollar, ask what stands behind it. Then ask the harder one, who is obliged? Every source in this case is linked below. If you want financial crime followed through the records instead of the hype, subscribe. Next time, $4 billion flowed into a currency that called itself a blockchain and turned out to have no blockchain at all.